drowning pool, Eminem, Barney. What do they all have in common? They were all used to torture people. If you don't think music is all that painful, wait until you hear these tragic stories. When it comes to misunderstood songs, Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA is tops. Even President Ronald Reagan took it to be a patriotic little tune. The fact it's a working man's anthem and a condemnation of the country's treatment of its citizens makes it pretty ironic that it would be used by the government to torture detainees at Guantanamo Bay. But it's doubtful Shocker Amr cared about that irony during his almost 14 years of captivity. According to NBC News, Amr was detained at Guantanamo after 9/11, and after the accusations went away and he was released, he's been pretty outspoken about what went on behind those closed doors.
Guantanamo is being built on how to destroy a human being totally, how to damage him mentally, physically, spiritually.
And part of that was relentlessly playing Born in the USA over and over, especially during prayer times. Sleep deprivation is no laughing matter, and one way to make sure a person isn't getting any winks is to play incredibly jarring music at a deafening volume. One of the songs Guantanamo Bay interrogators used to keep people awake was Drowning Pool's Bodies, but this particular story takes a weird turn. In 2017, Guantanamo Bay officials were busy booking entertainment for July 4th. Among the scheduled acts was Drowning Pool, but even the officials who were emailing back and forth thought this might not be the best idea. The emails, made public by the Freedom of Information Act, talked about how their live appearance at the base might be seen as being in poor taste, considering their song had been playing on a constant loop for 10 days while interrogators questioned Mohamedou Ould Slahi. According to Splinter, Slahi was ultimately released without being charged at the end of a 14-year stint in the facility. In 2005, the interrogation log for Guantanamo Bay detainee Mohammed al-Ghattani was published. It was a pretty shocking read. The 84-page leaked document detailed al-Ghattani's torture regimen. It started at midnight, and in order to keep him awake, a Christina Aguilera playlist was piped into the interrogation room. It may not have been a random choice either. The New Yorker suggests that Aguilera was used in the questioning of Islamist detainees because women singing were believed to be particularly offensive. In case you're not up on your Chilean history, here's a quick recap. In 1973, General Augusto Pinochet organized a successful military coup, ousted his rivals, and installed himself as ruler. That lasted for 17 years, a reign characterized by torture and thousands of deaths. Pinochet died in 2006, and that's when research into the darkest corners of his regime started. The University of Manchester interviewed some of the people who were held and tortured during his rule, and found that a popular tactic included days and days of torture via loud music. The songs weren't what you'd expect. George Harrison's My Sweet Lord was one of the most popular, along with Julio Iglesias' Venceremos. One of the women they spoke with said they played an Italian pop hit called Gigi L'Amoroso while they tortured her in other ways, and her captors would sing along, starting with When They Came to Get Her Out of Her Cell. The entire soundtrack to A Clockwork Orange was another favorite of Pinochet's torturers, which is both terrifying and a bit cliché. In 2003, the BBC revealed something that has the potential to ruin childhoods everywhere, and sanity for some. The United States Psychological Operations Company had settled on musical torture for getting information out of the prisoners being held in Iraq, and the song choices weren't random. Some groups were chosen because they were deemed culturally offensive, while others were just downright annoying. Songs from Barney and Sesame Street were high on the repeat list. When one U.S. operative talked to Newsweek, he claimed part of their training was listening to Barney's I Love You song for a 45-minute continuous loop. He added, "I never want to have to go through that again." If you're horrified by that, you're not the only one. Al Jazeera talked to composer Christopher Surf, who spent 40 years writing songs for Sesame Street. He was understandably heartbroken when he found out songs he'd written to help kids were being used to torture adults. Irish boy band Westlife had a massive hit with My Love way back in 2000. Since then, it's sort of faded from the public consciousness, but the song resurfaced briefly in 2015, when a lawsuit filed by the American Civil Liberties Union claimed that the CIA operatives included it in a torture program used in a cobalt prison in Afghanistan. Suleiman Abdullah, who was ultimately released from custody without being charged, said part of the torture he was subjected to involved being assaulted with music by Westlife. Westlife's Nikki Byrne was a presenter for RTE 2FM when the story broke and told RTE that he thought someone was pulling his leg when he heard about it, saying if it wasn't so serious it would be funny, but it is serious. Why My Love? Abdullah says the interrogators told him it was picked just for him, as he had been nabbed by the CIA 2 weeks after his wedding. He never saw his wife again. In 2017, a settlement was reached between the victims and psychologists responsible for establishing the program. According to the ACLU, this win was a first for a case that involved torture by the CIA. Binyan Mohammed's story is a long one that begins in 1994 when he sought asylum in the United Kingdom. According to The Guardian, he was later detained in Pakistan and was held in a CIA prison in Morocco for about 18 months, followed by detention in Guantanamo Bay. Since his 2009 release, he's been at the center of a massive human rights campaign and has detailed some horrible torture methods, including beatings and being sliced with a scalpel. It was all against a backdrop of relentless music. In Guantanamo, he described being chained to a wall while Eminem's The Real Slim Shady and Dr. Dre played on a seemingly infinite loop. And according to what he told Reprieve, his torture in Morocco involved being handcuffed and outfitted with headphones and forced to listen to hours of loop songs by Meatloaf, Aerosmith, and Tupac. He said the music played all day and all night, through daylight, through sleep, through prayer time.
He was shackled, subjected to sleep deprivation, and told he would disappear.
When The Guardian interviewed him in 2008, he claimed the music torture was worse than any of the physical pain, saying, "Imagine you are given a choice, lose your sight or lose your mind." The Guardian tried to reach out to a number of artists in 2008 to see how they felt about their music being used to torture prisoners. Most wouldn't comment, but one who did speak out was Britain's David Gray. His song Babylon was reportedly used in the torture of at least one prisoner at Abu Ghraib. The song was looped and turned up to ear-splitting volume. Gray was shocked people weren't more outraged, saying, "The moral niceties of whether they're using my song or not are totally irrelevant. We are thinking below the level of the people we're supposed to oppose, and it goes against our entire history and everything we claim to represent. It's disgusting, really." But not everyone has the same view on their music being used for this type of enhanced interrogation. Death metal band Deicide's F Your God was named as ranking pretty high on the favorites list for torture. The band's drummer, Steve Same, didn't have a problem with any of it, even questioning whether torture by music was really torture. Donald Vance was imprisoned in Baghdad's Camp Cropper in 2006, where he stayed for 97 long days. According to the New York Times, he was working as a security contractor when he reported his suspicions over illegal weapons trading. He was caught up in the sting and detained as a threat. Vance said hard rock was almost constant in his forced sleep deprivation. Along with a ton of Nine Inch Nails, there was one Queen song that played over and over again, "We Will Rock You." After his release, Vance brought legal action against the U.S. government.
If they, the government, could do this to me, an American, what is exactly happening to the many innocent Iraqi detainees?
The Blues Brothers is a cult classic, and it's hard to imagine anyone using it to cause harm to anyone else. But in 2014, the Senate Intelligence Committee made a CIA torture report public. One strange thing it mentioned specifically was the Blues Brothers version of Rawhide. It was played during the interrogation of Ramzi bin al-Shayb. According to the report, he was conditioned to know that when he heard that song start, interrogation was in his very near future. It wasn't just used to wear down a person mentally, it was used as a trigger to cue up a session of very bad things.
This noise, man. Get out!